Hey, Governor, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Very nice to see you. Well, your state is certainly getting a lot of attention, Governor
Yeah.
Beshear, with all the speculation about Mitch McConnell and his absence. And I know there was so little information available. You resorted to posting a call out to him directly on social media. This was a few days ago, saying Kentuckians have grown increasingly concerned about the current state of your health and well being and ability to hold office. Let's end the crazy speculation. Just tell us what's going on. Uh, so I'm curious, before we talk about today, Governor, what was going on back then and what prompted you to do that on social media directly to Senator McConnell?
Well, to me, this is pretty easy. Most everybody who's subscribed to your Substack, if they were in the hospital for a month, they'd have to call their boss. They'd have to explain what's going on, how they're feeling, what their prognosis is, and when they could get back to work, and if they had the capacity to get back to work. Well, Mitch McConnell's boss are the people of Kentucky. There are constituents which deserve honesty and transparency. It had been a month before anything had been put out, not even an official statement from Senator McConnell. In fact, I'd gotten two calls from different agencies, not state agencies, suggesting he'd passed. So this rampant speculation that was out there, it needed to end. People deserve to know what was going on. Now we've gotten a little bit. We've gotten one official statement and one picture. And hopefully, what that means is he's still with us, which is what we all want. But then there's the question of when can he get back to doing his job? And so I've encouraged publicly that call in to your Substack, call in to a cable
I'm
news
sure
show.
he's going to call into my Substack, Governor.
Well, hey, I can encourage it. I can encourage it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But the idea is make sure that you're reassuring people. And that's part of our job as public officials. I respect everyone's privacy. I know, especially for his health, it's probably important to him, but we give that up in some small part when we take on these jobs, and people have to have confidence in our ability to do them.
Well, what do you think of that photograph that was released? There's been so much speculation about it, as Governor Bashir. A lot of people are saying it's AI. A lot of people are saying it's just not accurate. I'm curious what you think of the photo. Have you been able to get it verified? Is it real? What do you know about it?
So before I posted, I sent a letter, an official letter asking for an update, or at least asking him to update the people of Kentucky. Our office has received nothing in response, no email, no call, no written letter, but they did put out the statement. And the reason I think that there's all this rampant speculation out there is, again, he hasn't called into anything. There's no video in an age of social media saying, hey, everybody, I'm okay and I'm going to be able to get back to my job. Just some really basic things that I think any of the rest of us, not just in government and politics, but in the media and other places would do. But I think it especially hits people because maybe some people have been in office so long they no longer think that they work for someone, and they
Mhm.
do. They work for the people.
In his statement on Sunday, Senator McConnell wrote, "Part of my decision to retire at the end of my term this coming January was being honest about the demands of Senate work. But I still have unfinished business to complete on your behalf, and I have every intention of finishing the job you elected me to do." Having said that, do you believe he can effectively continue to serve the people of Kentucky through January?
Well, he needs to show us that he can. And there's only the speculation that he can't because a whole month went by of him in the hospital with absolutely no official statement, nothing that was put out there. Sadly, this is internet and other speculation of his own making. But again, he's in the position to stop it. And all it is being honest and transparent with the people, which he needs to do.
Well, clearly his office, his staff, they're stonewalling you and your team. Has no one on your staff talked to no one on Mitch McConnell's staff? I imagine they've tried to reach out, right?
We haven't had that direct communication. And up until a point, I was trying to be respectful of a person's privacy about their health care. I get that. And he did put something in a statement that's true. That generation, which is my dad's generation, is a little more private about their health, but he's not in a position right now where he can be. And I don't say that intending to lack feeling. I grew up knowing one of his daughters who was and is a good person. I don't want them to have a loss that she and her family have to feel, but the people of Kentucky who I serve just deserve to know that he can finish out this term, and it's in his hands to do that.
And I'm sorry, I know you answered this question, but do you think that photo was doctored or it's real, or what do you think of that photo?
I don't have any way of knowing anything more than anyone else. They did put out a pretty long statement. It does sound like Senator McConnell. But again, the idea that that statement basically suggests he's alive, which is good, doesn't answer the question of capacity to do the job, which we all have to prove on a day to day basis.
In fact, someone who's watching right now said, I don't understand why no one has gone to the hospital to confirm that he is coherent or, I guess, of sound mind, if you will.
Well, that hospital's a little far away from me. I'm here in Kentucky trying to do
That's
my
true.
job here
Yeah, that's
on
true.
video, showing my capacity. But again, I just think that all of this could be easily dispelled by being open and honest with the people of Kentucky and with the position he's held, the people of the United States of America. Think about how long he's been in the Senate, and he's talked about that, and he's talked about his place in history, and he's talked about being in a leadership role, whether he's there now or not. That gives you that extra requirement, I think, to be upfront.
Governor, Kentucky's Senate succession laws have changed twice in the last several years over your objections, I should add, in large part because Republicans didn't want a Democratic governor like
Hmm.
you appointing a successor if Senator McConnell ever left office at the end of his term. I was just talking to Senator Chris Coons.
A
So,
good man.
so what does, and he asked me to ask you this, but what does that mean if, in fact, Mitch McConnell is incapacitated, what happens next?
Well, first, let me say if you had Chris Coons on before me, that's an honor. He's a good man and enjoy working with him. Our state legislature has become so overly partisan with a Republican supermajority that I had to get a Supreme Court opinion saying they can't take all the duties of a governor and give it to an agriculture commissioner. This idea that we were just empty vessels they'd move around. And originally it could start partisan, right? We're going to give it to a Republican, but then it could have gone, we're going to give it to whoever will do what we want, which breaks down that separation of powers. And we've seen in DC what happens when one branch can't or won't, or two branches can't or won't do their jobs. So they've passed not one, but two laws. They're so scared of me being able to fill a vacancy. But here's what they haven't looked at, and I admit it hasn't been tested. There is a section of Kentucky's Constitution, I think it's 152, and it says that a governor has the appointment power to fill vacancies of offices elected statewide. The question is, does that apply to a federal office? Well, before there was ever a statute that the Republican majority could change or not change, Kentucky governors made appointments. And that constitutional provision was the only thing in writing at the time.
So, what does that mean?
Well, it means that if we reach a vacancy, I think a lot of options are on the table, and I'll look at all of them.
Wow. Okay. A somewhat similar situation is unfolding in South Carolina, where Governor Henry McMaster appointed Lindsey Graham's sister, Darlene Graham Nordone, I guess is how you pronounce it, to serve out the remainder of his term until January. What was your reaction to that?
Well, first, I do want to express my sympathies towards Lindsey Graham's family. I don't think we agreed on much other than Ukraine deserving our help and Russia being the aggressor, which should be easy. But I come from a long line of Baptist ministers. My dad's generation was the first that wasn't. And my grandfather ran the Beshear Funeral Home, a small business that ultimately sent my dad to college first generation. So my family's been to and led a lot of funerals, and I just know the personal impact of losing somebody really suddenly is difficult. With that said, what you look at in this vacancy, I don't know anything about the person who's filling it, other than that's who Donald Trump said should fill it, and then
His
that's what
sister,
happened.
obviously.
A governor ought to select someone that can go in and can do the job, especially in a short period, can get things done, has the training and expertise to do it. I don't have the background to judge this one, but I can tell you this. If I have the power to appoint someone, I wouldn't appoint anybody recommended by Donald Trump. because this president had the worst economic policy of my lifetime with tariffs. He has most bungled foreign policy more than any other president with this war he started in Iran. And now it's on again, and then it was off again, and now it's on again. And he says putting tolls on the Strait of Hormuz is a violation of international law, but suddenly we're going to do it. Like, we need a check on this president, just like in the past, we believe there need to be a check on any president, but certainly this one desperately needs it.
I want to ask you a couple related questions because I think the sudden passing of Lindsey Graham, what's going on with Mitch McConnell, has led to a broader conversation that both parties have been grappling with in recent years, and that is about aging leadership in Washington and the reluctance of some politicians to step aside. How do you think about this issue? Do you believe there should be term limits and age cutoff? Any thoughts on those?
I do wonder if Lindsey Graham and that significant international travel, which impacts all of us, that's a long way to travel, was some factor in losing him earlier than I think any of his family members would have ever wanted to. But I do want to point out that aging affects people differently. You have Jim Clyburn, who is as sharp as he can be, who is such an important voice out there. And so I don't look so much at age limits. I look more at term limits. President is limited to 2 terms in office. As Kentucky's governor, I'm limited to 2 terms in office. Well, if we're co-equal branches, why aren't there term limits in Congress? Why aren't there term limits in the Supreme Court? And let me tell you, if there were, then we wouldn't have these games where somebody could try to appoint the youngest justice they could for the longest period of time and then convince someone to step down at just the right time. No, this would be more about people's qualifications. And so I think what we need in numerous areas, including campaign finance, this partisan redistricting that we now see, and the need for term limits in Congress and in the Supreme Court, is a fix the darn country constitutional amendment. And I know some people say, whoa, that's a big thing that rarely happens. It has happened at moments in time where our country feels broken, where there have been huge divisions. That's when we stepped up and said, let's actually fix this and move forward together.
Senator Coons, when we were talking at the end of our conversation, was curious about how you've been able to govern effectively a ruby red state like Kentucky that Donald Trump won overwhelmingly, I guess both times. And yet, here you are, a lonely Democrat, Governor Beshear, with an 80% approval rating, I think. Last I checked, I don't know what it is right now, but I think Senator Coons was interested in you talking about how you've been able to successfully govern such a politically divided state, but it's not even really that divided. It's so pro Trump. And how have you been able to navigate that?
Well, I've got a 60+% approval rating, which is
Okay,
pretty,
sorry, I gave you
that's
a
okay.
better one.
It's pretty darn good in Kentucky. I think it's pretty darn good just about anywhere. And I think a whole lot of it is the people of Kentucky know how much I care about them and how hard I work for them, and we get results. More new jobs than ever before, more private sector investment. Our average wage for a new job last year reached almost $30 an hour. They see me out creating new jobs in every community. I don't believe in red counties or blue counties. These are my Kentucky families, and I'm going to bust my tail for every single one of them. But if people were saying, what's your secret sauce? I'd say the recipe has 3 parts. Is number 1, I stand up for all my convictions. And sometimes a majority of Kentuckians might disagree with them, but they respect people of conviction. But even with that, I always spend 80% of my time on things that matter to 100% of the people of Kentucky. That's the idea that when people wake up in the morning, they're not thinking about the next race. They're thinking about their job, the roads and bridges they drive, the next doctor's appointment for themselves, their parents, or their kids, the school they drop their children off at, and whether they feel safe in their community. When I move the needle for that, it moves our state forward for everyone without leaving anyone behind. And so there have been times where I've taken a stance that some people I know don't agree with, but I'll see them the next day and they'll say, keep bringing in those jobs. The second thing I try to do is to talk to people and not at them and never down to them. Listen, when you're from where I'm from, a lot of people have talked down to you at different times in your life. A lot of people have tried to make assumptions about you. You've got to talk to every voter with respect, whether they always vote for you or never vote for you. And you've got to get rid of this sterilized lingo that has crept into especially the Democratic Party. It's that idea of the number of friends that I lost to a drug overdose. I didn't lose to substance use disorder. I lost them to addiction. The word has the feeling that I feel when I see their face. When I think about the big ugly bill and 11,000 kids getting kicked off SNAP in Kentucky because of the president and a Congress that was complicit with them, those kids aren't going to be food insecure. They're going to go hungry. When I think about seniors not having enough to eat because our state legislature wouldn't put in the money that they knew they had to, that I was pushing. Again, that's not food insecurity, it's hunger. But the last piece is Democrats, we are people of substance, but we are too policy wonkish. Like we get down into the weeds at a level of which it's good that we know our policy that way. But people right now aren't as concerned about the what, but the why. What drives you? Why are you willing to deal with politics? Why are you willing to deal with the toxicity that's out there? For me, my why is my family and my faith. And when I make that tough decision, I explain it in those terms. So, for instance, I'm running for reelection in 2023. I veto the nastiest anti-LGBTQ plus bill our state had ever seen, but I also described it the way that I made my decision. I said I believe that all children are children of God, and I just don't want people picking on those kids. And I know some people disagreed with it, but they understood where I was coming from.
So it's plain language and telling things like they are instead of getting it to this academic level is one
Language that
thing
has
that. But
passion too, right? Because people want you to fight for a better life for them. They're desperate. And if you're sounding like a professor, no offense to our professors, then you're not conveying how much you care about their issue and how much you want to address it.
the Democratic Party, I think semantics may be one of the problems, but right now it seems like there's a fight for the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. There is a conflict between progressive Democrats and or Democratic Socialist Democrats. Am I saying this right?
Democrat Socialist.
Thank you, Democratic Socialists. Thank you. It's been a long day, and also more establishment figures within the Democratic Party. And initially thought, oh, well, this is New York City and some candidates may be more left. But we've seen this happening in states like Wisconsin and Michigan and other places. And there seems to be, I think, this concern on the part of some Democratic strategists, like if you talk to James Carville, uh, about the direction of the Democratic Party, then other people, of course, say, well, a lot of the policies Democratic Socialists are fighting for are not that out of whack with what a lot of people want, like universal health care, stuff like that. So I'm curious what you make of this rift and what direction you think the Democratic Party needs to go in. So to not turn off either of those groups, for example, in the midterms.
Well, the Democratic Party has to be a big tent party. We have democracy in our names, which means we have to be able to disagree on some things, but be willing to work together on the things that matter most to people. And I actually don't think that the Democratic base or voters have necessarily shifted. I think right now they don't believe in anyone's solution. They just don't see life getting better. And I will say this, many who are running under the Democratic Socialist brand or the Progressive brand are making their case with just extreme passion. They are convincing voters that they will work as hard as they can. And that's what voters are asking for right now. They're not just saying fight with Donald Trump, they're saying fight for me. And so I think as Democrats, we've got to make our case as strongly as possible while also still having realistic solutions. Because listen, you can run however you want, but when you win, you have to get results. And that's what you see, especially with Democratic governors. And I'll say this, we're always trying to put people in a box, and no one fits uniquely in any one box. It's one of the reasons that I'm able to get Republican support in Kentucky, because I don't look at somebody as a Republican voter. And I never use the term MAGA Republicans because I don't think we should be judging our voters. We can judge our officials, but everyone has unique experiences. Everybody's been through things where their views are a little bit different. And so we need to make sure we're a little more tolerant and understanding of each other, which is exactly what we're asking for so many people out there. And then instead of just focusing on the differences, how about we focus on the things we have in common? So I view myself as pragmatic. I don't view myself as a moderate or a progressive. But people have tried to say Elizabeth Warren and I are in different parts of a party. We may disagree on some ways to get places, but we had one of the best conversations on pre K and the importance of that to 4 year olds and what it could mean to the United States. And let me tell you, if we could work together on that, it could be transformational for this country. So just like I can't just push back Republicans and not work with them in Kentucky, the idea is to make sure that we are talking with everyone. We're finding those areas we agree, we're respecting disagreements, and then we're not trying to move left or right. We're just trying to move forward.
Gosh, you sound like somebody who may want to be president of the United States, Governor. I know that you and I have had conversations a couple of times, and you've been pretty dodgy about it. Tell me what you're thinking along those lines. Is this something that you're considering, or tell us what you're weighing right now?
Well, first, I'm focused on 2026 because I'm the head of the Democratic Governors Association. And we are going to win in places that people aren't expecting. We've got a great candidate that could flip Iowa and Rob Sand. We got a great candidate in Amy Acton that could flip Ohio. Keisha Lance Bottoms ran away with her primary in Georgia and has a great chance there. Aaron Ford in Nevada. But here's what I'd say about 28. The governor's races in 26 create the map for the presidential in 28. And that makes it important that anyone thinking about 28 is focused on them. Think about if Katie Hobbs isn't reelected and Andy Biggs, an election denier, becomes the governor of Arizona. Does that take Arizona off the map? The margin of error in Nevada and Georgia, and what it means having a Democratic governor that will protect and make sure that election is free and fair. So I'm not looking further than 2026 because what's so critical, because we have to win in 28, regardless of who our candidate is. Now, I will say I think our candidate needs to be a Democratic governor, and we've got a lot of great ones. And I say that because I feel like by the time we get there, with all of Donald Trump's failed promises, people aren't going to believe someone who doesn't have the receipts. They can't show how they've created jobs, how they built more housing, how they've improved infrastructure, how they've expanded healthcare. And I just say, as for me personally, and I think I've told you this story before, in 2023, I walked off the stage after my reelection, knowing that I'd be term limited. Looked at my wife, Brittany, who'd sacrificed so much and said, woo, I'll never have to run for office again. At the time, I meant it because being governor is so special when you love where you're from and when you worked so hard and seen so much progress for all your people. Sitting here today, I'm not sure that's true or not. But what I can say is, in no matter what role it's in, I will not leave a broken country to my kids or anyone else's. I grew up in the United States of America where I might have agreed or disagreed with the president. I will tell you, I don't believe that George W. Bush did his job very well, but I wasn't concerned about the stability of the United States like my kids are now. They deserve better, and so does everybody else.
All right. Well, that sounds like a stump speech to me, Governor.
What grade does it get?
I thought it was good. I thought it was
Hey,
good.
you've heard
Solid.
a few.
I have. Listen, thanks so much for talking with us. And if you get any more information, intel on what's happening with Mitch McConnell, will you let us know?
I will. And before we sign off, let me just say I am so impressed when I read you did your full audiobook because I'm doing that right now. And it is a bigger challenge for my book, Go and Do Likewise, than I thought. But yours, 15 hours, mine a lot shorter.
Oh, good. Well, it is a lot of work and it's exhausting, but I think people appreciate when the actual author reads the book instead of some actor. So look forward to listening to it, Governor.